So yeah, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Hopefully you're all aware of what you've signed up for. This is the second webinar with our expert rugby coach, Sam Howard. This one in particular focusing on the popular or unpopular topic of tackle technique and how that is changing in rugby currently and how it's massively affecting the game all across the sport completely, right down the foundation level up until the professional standard as well. So Sam, before we get into that topic, do you want to just give us a brief background of your coaching experience?
Yeah, I try and keep it brief. Obviously, I'm an old dinosaur, so I've been around. So I was fortunate enough to go to university before the game went pro. So I qualified as a teacher, which I think is a great background for any coach to have that experience. So I taught for a year, then the game went pro and I had a few years playing. And in one of my roles as Exeter Chiefs, I was also the director of rugby at Exeter University. And that's where I first started coaching, sort of, as I would say, properly. So I had 2 years at Exeter University and we won what was then Booster. It is now the Bucks competition. I then went to Dulwich College and had 10 years at Dulwich College. Was their head of rugby. We won 3 national competitions in a row, which was great. I then had a few years coaching at Blackheath at the same time. Then I left Dulwich to go to Eltham College and also be head coach at Old Elthamians in National 1. Just missed out on promotion to Championship, which is unfortunate. And as we've seen at Wasps, Worcester and Irish, our benefactor unfortunately passed away out of nowhere, and the club now sort of doesn't exist, so, or at least at the top end. So I'm now involved with you guys. I'm involved with SEG, which is a sports academy, and I'm working at St Benedict's School and at Charlton Park Rugby Club. So I'm still fairly busy in the rugby scene. So that's a very brief précis of what I've been up to.
Probably quite a modest description as well. But from that, it's clear that you've been around the game a lot, seen it change a lot. So yeah, let's get started with tackle technique. Can you just sort of describe what's currently going on in the game and how that's changed over X amount of years?
I think the biggest change in the tackling probably came when the game went professional. So I think that sort of anyone, when we were taught, it was like tackle around the legs, people can't run without their legs, all these sorts of things. And that was the norm. I think the game went professional, and with that, sort of, you look to other sports, and obviously rugby league would be the obvious example of a sport that had been professional, and their defences were so good. And so in came the like getting in close, punching with your shoulder, hitting higher, and the game sort of, or tackling, I think, became a lot more physical. It became more dominant, and everything got higher. And I think it's just culminated recently in, you see lots of headshots on the telly, and these guys are so powerful now that I think the RFU, the World Rugby, are worried about sort of parents and their children watching this game with massive forearms, swinging arms, and people getting knocked out, that maybe are they going to want their children to play the game? So I think that's sort of where we're at. I think it's the top end of the game where it's so physical that you get so many headshots and concussions. I don't actually think, and in my experience, there isn't actually that much of a problem with headshots and high tackles in probably 90% of the game. But I can understand or sort of see where the RFU and the World Rugby might want to make some changes. They may have gone about it differently, but we are where we are.
Yeah, we've spoken about this a bit before. Have you certainly noticed a change in attitude from parents, particularly those sort of coming through school rugby? And how's that sort of affected you as a coach?
I think it's not just parents and it's not just rugby. I think it's the world we live in now, with people having choices and not just doing what they're told. And I think before it was, right, you went to a school, and if your school did rugby, that's what you did, and you get on with it. Whereas now, parents, not just about sport, but about anything in school, are a lot more demanding, and a sort of why must my kid do that just because you say so? So what you've got to do, and I think a lot of schools are doing it really well, you've just got to provide really good reasons for the children to be playing rugby, especially because there is that fear. So you've got to explain the benefits of basically working in a team, leadership, resilience, fun, responsibility, all of the good things that we know rugby is great for, and you've got to highlight them, and you've got to provide really good coaching that shows that the sport is safe. And if you do all those things, then parents are generally going to be happy. But there is a big worry amongst certain parents about their boys or girls getting hurt.
Yeah, the RFU have recently, well, it was probably a few months ago now, released a few new rules and guidance on tackle technique and changing the rules almost. What would you recommend that the RFU did to sort of combat head injuries, but also to reassure these sort of parents that are a bit concerned?
I think that the majority of us want the truth about statistics and figures that have come about the amount of injuries that there are. Now, I was involved in probably about 100 games of rugby last year, all the way from adults down to sort of little kids. And there were 2 concussions in all of them. And both of them were from actually someone getting tackled and their head hitting the floor. So I would love to know where all these apparent concussions from high tackles are coming from. At the top end, they are crazy physical. They're beasts. They're not normal human beings. And so the force that they're generating is leading to concussions. It's just not happening in probably 90% of the game. And I think that was the reason why so many people were sort of getting, well, quite literally upset about the rule changes and it being basically forced upon everyone without any consultation.
Can you just tell us a bit more about that, please, Sam? When they announced that, it caused a lot of controversy, particularly on social media. But how did you feel as a coach yourself? How did the coaching community feel about that? And also the players that you work with?
Kids don't really see any different. They're like, just get on with it. So where I'm coaching now, sort of Charlton Park, is community rugby. Like most of the forwards were saying they can't remember the last time they made a chop tackle. Like they're quite happy, sort of having a little bit of a cuddle, and that's fine. And so, and again, a lot of, obviously, I'm older. Quite a few of my mates play vets. They're like, the vets game's gone. If you're asking people to sort of start tackling, so there was a lot of like knee-jerk reaction, but I think it was a knee-jerk sort of. It came out of nowhere. No one was expecting this thing. So, and to suddenly say where the tackle height was, and it was all a bit ambiguous. So I honestly think that not much is going to change. I hope that the referees are going to sort of be a little bit forgiving. Like, where is the sternum anyway? Where it's here? And I would suggest that anything over there anyway should be a high tackle. So what's anything up here should be a high tackle, really. So I don't really think, I'm hoping that not that much changes. I've always coached tackling legs anyway, so it really won't affect the way that I coach, but obviously that's just always been my preference.
You sound really optimistic there, which is quite refreshing, because like I said, when it first came out on social media, I saw a lot of comments saying how it was the end of rugby and people are going to refuse to play the following season if this went through. Like I say, you sound optimistic, but do you worry about the future of rugby, given all these sort of reports coming out about concussion and things alike?
I worry about, it's almost, I'm generally an optimistic person. Like my son is 14, and you go to any rugby club on a Sunday and there's hundreds and hundreds of kids playing rugby, and they're being organised by amateur volunteers, and it's so well run, and you just think the game is in a really good place. And then if you're involved in a rugby club and fixtures come out and your last home game is at the start of March, and then some league that none of you, competition that none of you want to enter happens, and then at that same time the law change about the tackle height comes out, and it all added together leads to maybe a little bit of mistrust in the RFU, and do they have their pulse on what's going on for 90% of clubs and schools? And then you see what's happening to Worcester and Wasp and Irish. So there is, I think there has to be a little bit of worry about where the game's going. But as I said, you go to any club on a Sunday and there's hundreds and hundreds of kids wanting to play the game, which is great. But the adult game is dwindling, and this new law coming in can only make it worse. It's not going to help make players join up and play the game. And obviously you want as many people playing the game Saturday afternoons as possible. Yeah.
This leads us on quite nicely. So obviously at Sportplan, we try and help coaches of various levels, coaching various teams, try and give them as many ideas as possible to make it as easy as possible for them as well, and also to share best practice amongst other coaches. So what we're going to do now, we're just going to go through a couple of drills that you've designed for us, Sam, and we'll start off with one, which I believe is a slight bit of a warm-up exercise. So we're just going to share that screen now. Whilst this is playing, Sam, do you mind just talking us through what's happening and sort of what the process is and how you go about coaching that?
Yeah, so obviously my aim is now to try and, we want as many leg tackles as possible, and a big problem that people have is that they find it hard to get from a high position into a low position. So here you've got the tackler like in a good solid bare ball position. As soon as the ball carrier picks the ball up, he can come forward and just make his tackle. So it's really just aiding him. He's already low. He hasn't got the problem of having to get low. And as you can see, it's a perfect leg tackle. Great thing about that drill, like the tackler's probably made 4 tackles there in about 30 seconds. It's all controlled. Ball carrier is not running really fast. So in terms of safety, things like that, no one's getting hurt there. Whereas you're getting that player used to making low tackles, and a lot of players, the big thing they struggle with is going from an upright position into a low position. So having them start low in a good solid bear crawl position, which is again good for core strength, a little bit of movement, really good drill for any ages and any abilities on that one. And again, you could run that with a whole squad, because you could have, they do that, another pair jump in, and you can have that set up all around the pitch, around the whole pitch, but in quite a small area. So really good drill with lots of people, or in a really small group as well.
Are there any common mistakes that people make when carrying out that drill? Is there anything that coaches should look out for?
On that one, it's hard to get it wrong on that one.
Okay.
Like, you just got to make sure that the big thing when you get to tackling, sometimes the tackler just wants to smash. Like, he thinks, I'm doing tackling, I've got to do it 100 miles an hour. And all he's got to just really, on that one, just think about staying low, not coming up. So not coming from the bear crawl, staying up, staying low, let the attacker, the ball carrier is not trying to dodge him. He's literally just heading to one side. But he doesn't know which way he's going to go, but he's just going to go there. So it's just making sure you stay low, head behind, all the same things. Okay, head behind, ring of steel, hit with your shoulder. And as you saw those guys do it there, that's the first time that they've done that as well. That's not like, sort of, right, we've done this drill for 10 weeks, you've got to look good. That's the first time they've done it, and they just picked it up straight away.
Brilliant. And that would be used as a sort of a warm-up to a tackling focus session, would it?
Yeah, I think it's a like, as coaches, you want as many sort of tools in your toolbox, because the players get bored doing things over and over again. And ultimately, with tackling, it's the same things: come off the line, get low, get your foot in close, ring a steel, head behind. So it's just another way of doing it. But the beauty of it is, if people are worried about the body height and the tackle law, bringing everything down, it's an easy way for the players to start in a low position. So there should be no problem with people tackling high. And as people can't run without the legs. You want them you want to tackle legs.
The old rugby cliche, yeah. No, that's a really good one, which brings us on nicely to the second one, which is one of my personal favourites. So similarly, if you could just talk us through describe what's going on here and the sort of coaching points a bit what you'd be explaining.
Obviously, the last one's also easy to set up. So here you've got a bit more. So you can see the two people are holding like an agility pole. Like it could be flags, it could be a sausage, it could be anything. But as you'll see here, the tackler has to go under that pole to make the tackle. Okay, so what's going to happen? He feeds the ball into the attacker, touches the cone to his right, and then comes through and makes a tackle. So obviously the development and what's much harder here is that the tackler has to go from a high position, get low, stay low, make the tackle. So for kids, agile people, this is obviously a lot easier than maybe the older guys that have been playing for quite a while. So it's a lot about knowing your players and what's going to be relevant there. So you can start with a higher height. But what's great about it is you can say get lower, but on that they have to get lower, otherwise they hit the pole. So it's a really good drill for getting the defender low. And as you can see on that last tackle there, there's this misconception you can't have a powerful in low, but you can still drive through the tackle, and that brings in a little bit of acceleration as well. So it's again a little bit fun as well. It's not the same boring old stuff. And again, you've got 4 people there. You could have another 2, like as soon as the first 2 have gone through, you could have another 2 in there. So you can have good numbers doing it. So yeah, just another variation on getting good low tackle.
Just playing devil's advocate, both those drills we've seen, which you've touched on, they've been done at quite a slow pace. And you alluded to it yourself, that kids just want to go kind of full speed, 100% and smash each other. Do you think there's a time for that? Because rugby is played at quite a quick speed. And how would you look to progress from these drills that are done quite slowly to maybe replicating a match speed tackle?
Yeah, I think it's what you're trying to achieve, and I think on tackle technique, you don't need to be going full speed. Hardly ever. I would hardly ever go full on. The only would be maybe in a game situation. So I don't think there's anything wrong with playing. Like I play quite a lot of games, and especially with the younger kids, it'd be right, we're going full on, just a proper game for 20 minutes. And so they're getting their chance. I think if you're working on tackle technique, I think you've got to slow it down, and you've got to just working with those boys there. Each player will probably have one part of their technique that they have to work on. So it might be one of the players doesn't come off the line very well. So so on him, you're like, right, come on, you're going to come off the line. Someone struggles to get low, so that's what you're working on. Someone struggles to get their foot in as close as they can. Another person might struggle with their body height. So you're really, the more over the last 2 or 3 years I've noticed working with smaller groups is so good on the tackle technique and understanding what a player can or can't do. And then just at the end of that little session where you've got 4 of them, each one had something they had to work on. And at the end of the session, I was just like, what's next week? What are you going to work on? Oh, I'm going to work and get my head position. Why? Because I've got to be safe. Yeah, that's it. And it's not just telling them, it's why they've got to do it. So like my son, he tackles a bit, he doesn't really have a ring of steel. So I'm like, what have you got to work on? Ring of steel, why? Well, if I let go, they're going to run off, or their foot is going to bash me in the head. So it's understanding why, as a coach, you're telling them to do something rather than just, right, do this. So, because the coach said. Yeah. So, yeah, but you can, like on that bear crawl one, if you wanted, you could have them further apart. Mm-hmm. So you can have them 5 meters apart, and it could be right. Yeah, we're running at 100%, but you can have it not dodging. So at least, then you're building up the speed. You know which shoulder is going at, and you're still making a good low tackle. So yeah, if you've got a really competent tackler, then you want to be doing a few at top end speed, but you want to be doing far less. You don't want to be doing lows, because again, it is a bit of an abnormal thing to do, smash someone as they're running hard at you. Yeah, what our bodies are made for. But you do have to get them ready for game-like situations.
Yeah, okay. So given how important the technique is with tackling, so we're almost saying if we get the technique right, we can then therefore transfer that to regardless of the pace of the game. In these drills, they're really good. However, it was 4 people and you were overseeing them. Naturally, when coaches are coaching, they're probably going to have groups of 15 to 20. What advice would you give to coaches who almost can't oversee every group? How would you give them any little golden nuggets of how would they oversee those different groups in order to make them get it right?
If you're on your own, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. But just by being at local rugby clubs, there's nearly always a couple, 2 or 3 coaches around. So it might be, and the more I'm thinking about it, might be I would take off just 8 players, and the rest are with one of the other coaches, and they could be playing a touch game or doing something else, a handling drill, which is easier to oversee than maybe the contact drill. And that you as the coach just take those off 10 minutes, and you've got a real clear focus then. You've got a small group, you've got a real clear focus on what you're doing. If you can't do that, and if you are on your own and you've got 20 plus, then as I always say to the boys, no matter how old I coach, from literally 7 years old upwards, it's like, how many coaches are there here if I'm just with them? And they'll all go 1. It's like, no, 20. They all can coach as well. They can see what a player's doing, what a player's not, and you use them to help. So again, if there's that little 4 drill, the 2 people that are on the pad and say they've seen what's gone on, it's like, right, you've got to get your foot in closer. Your head's gone the wrong side because of this. So get the players to coach themselves, because if you are on your own and say you've got, I don't know, 3 little sections set out, you can only concentrate on one of them. Like, no matter how you try to sort of keep your eye on them, I think you are better really focusing on one, let the others get on with the drill, coach each other, and then move on. So yeah, it's hard, but that's almost a little bit of a nugget that I use all the time. Is sort of how many coaches are there, and get them to think of themselves as coaches. And you'll always have a few of them that will love it and will actually be really good at it. So yeah, use the players.
Yeah. We've had a couple of really good questions come in the chat box so far. We will try and answer them at the end. So if anyone has any, please enter them before we approach the end. What sort of advice, Sam, would you give to coaches about implementing the tackle technique and in particular changes? You alluded to early on that you don't think much changes. Do you therefore think coaches shouldn't necessarily change their approach, or do you think they should make players aware of what's going on?
I think it depends how you've coached. Like a lot, like as you've seen, as all the drills are going up on Sportsplan, and as people will see, none of them are hitting pads. They're all tackling player on player. And if you've always been someone that's been about tackling pads and about sort of, which is what coming to the game, get your foot in literally next to the person you're tackling, punch with your shoulder up here. If you've been doing that, then you are going to have to change, because I think that's what you're doing there. You're inviting the referee to make a decision, whereas you're going low, you're helping the referees. And my thing, Zali, I've always coached my teams, help the referees. Don't let them make a decision. And I think like the it's not called the Heineken Cup anymore, but the final, when the La Rochelle Centre went high with like a minute to go and and you're like, why are you doing it? Like, and I'm sure he hasn't been coached like that, but over the years he would have been coached getting close, punch with your shoulder. So if you've been doing that, I think you're going to have to come down to lots of leg tackles. And again, pre-season now, no one's done any contact. There is nothing wrong. I will always start, even like, and I'm telling you, I think sort of Phil Larder, when he started coaching England before they won the World Cup, he had the players on their knees, proper old school, player running towards them, head behind, ring of steel, end up on top. And I think that there's nothing wrong with really going back to basics and keeping it simple and just making sure the players are confident with making low tackles and get their head in the right position, because your head's so much more important if you're going low than if you're tackling high.
That's a good point, actually. You mentioned how you focus on tackling straight away in sort of pre-season. Is it also something you look to use in a weekly basis, every training session throughout the season, or is it something you nail and get right early on, and then review potentially as the season goes on?
Why wouldn't you? So literally, you would. I'm sure every coach would do some handling in every session. Now we've only got the ball for 50% of the time. Okay, so I think there should, and the handling, obviously it isn't hard, it isn't easy to get spot on, but it's a lot easier to coach and for the players to do than tackling. Whereas the tackling, if in terms of safety, we should almost be doing more on that. And I would suggest that there should be 10 to 15 minutes on tackling in every session. And just seeing those four on the videos we've seen, one of those boys who's played a lot of rugby, it might just be because he hasn't played for however long or because of the off season, but kept getting his head in the wrong position. And it's like, right, we've got to nail this. And so the only way you're going to change it is through really simple drills until he gets it. If someone can't catch, you're going to do the simplest drills you can so that they can. And you do that with tackling. You build them up. And I think that it should be, even if it's just 5 minutes, a little bit of one-on-one, getting used to tackling, getting used to your foot as close as you can, hit with your shoulder, head behind, ring of steel. They're generally the same principles in all the drills, but it's just sort of speed it up. You can have more people, you can have dodging, you can manipulate it however you like, which is why all the drills on Sportplan are really good, I think. That you can go from big groups, small groups, young to the actual very elite. But yeah, no, it's not always possible. It depends how often. If you've only got them every Sunday and then you've got a game, I get it, it's hard. But I would at least think, right, have we done any tackling today? No, but the reason is this, fine, rather than just, it would have been a bit harder. So just a little bit of preparation, then at least some in every week.
Yeah.
Players like tackling. That's why they play rugby generally. There's lots of other sports where they can not tackle. Most kids like tackling. Yeah,
interesting. I remember you telling me a story the other week about how you once came across Ben Earl in a school game, and he was extremely physical. But like you say, a lot of people do like tackling, but especially at schoolboy rugby, when people are growing at different ages, what would you say to maybe a child that hasn't fully developed yet, that is potentially on the smaller side? Is there anything you'd work with them specifically, give them more confidence to sort of overcome that physical disadvantage at that particular age?
Well, the flip side of that is it's a lot easier for small people to make really low tackles.
Like it.
Because they're smaller, they're closer to the ground. But yeah, you obviously do get big disparity of ages. I get that. And you don't want your smallest player tackling the largest player on the pitch time and time again. That just puts people off the game. So again, you ensure that they're confident with their tackling. So with their technique, they know that, and I sort of, it used to be like the cheek to cheek sort of, but I think that's too high because and it's an over exaggeration. But with youngsters, I say sock tops. It's like literally look at sock tops, which if you look at something, your body height comes down. And actually, most kids, unless you've got really almost freakish kids, most kids' calves are generally all about the same size.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's from about the knee up that you get the big kids, and obviously at the chest they're even bigger. So actually, if you point that out to the kids, like get the biggest kid there is, get the smallest kid standing next to each other. They'll be very different from knee down. There won't be that much difference. And that's a really odd thing to say, but it's like, right, that's where you tackle, you're generally going to be okay. But you're always going to have the big kid that runs. Like, even international, Tuolangi's the big kid, he runs through over people. That again, it is a physical game. But again, you look at Harry Randall, your George Gregans, your scrum half, Shane Williams on the wing, like in the modern day, it is a game for all sizes. And I think maybe this rule, it may go back to that a little bit. But on the flip side of that, your tall 6'6", 6'7" guys are a bit like, how am I going to get as low as you want me to? But yeah, I think it is doable. Look at Sam Underhill, he tackles ankles and he's 6'4". So it is doable, but yeah, you just got to build the confidence in the smaller ones, just by lots of drills. But ultimately, if a kid doesn't want to make a tackle, he's not going to make it.
Yeah.
That's no matter how big or how small. We all know people that didn't like tackling. To be fair, I didn't really like it after a certain age. I didn't really like tackling, but I was good at organising. But most kids, if they want to play the game well, they will tackle.
Yeah, okay. We've had a good question come in from Kevin Gillard, actually. It's related to tackling, but it's almost on the other side. And his question is, do you think we'll have issues with players lowering their head height as they're going into contact?
Well, obviously the RFU have come out with the law and sent it through. You're not allowed to dip. I don't think it's a natural thing to actually run and sort of, you might dip a little bit, but you're not going to dip crazy low. And again, I think in the European Cup final, I think it was the Lara show, it might have been the next, I'm not sure which way. The player dipped really low, or it might have been the Saracen, it might have been the Premiership final, actually, Saracen Sale. Jamie George dipped at the last minute and literally almost went sort of horizontal. There was nothing the Sale players can do. And the ref was like, play on. Like, you can't dip that late into the tackle. So, like, it's definitely not something that I'd be coaching. But you always get some coaches that always try and work around a law or make it hard or something. So, but I wouldn't be sort of emphasizing players dipping low to make the tackle. I think the big thing about the chop tackling is obviously if you're only going low, the ball carriers can offload a lot more. So it's how do you then? But you can't. It's like in the game, there's going to be space somewhere on the pitch, whether you leave it for the kick or like you can't defend everything. And a bit like if you're going to tackle low, you've got to be aware that there might be the offload. So you're going to have to bring your defenders all maybe a little bit closer so the next person can make the next tackle as well. But offloading in games is a good thing, I think. So the more offloads, the better.
Probably a different topic altogether.
Massive, exactly. It's like you do something, a new coach will come up with an idea of breaking you some other way. So it's always you have to give up something somewhere. Yeah.
We've had one here from Simon Turner who said, "What's your view on defending without a double tackle?" Because obviously, without as a second.
Yeah, well, that sort of leads on from what I was just saying. Like you generally do want. Again, I suppose it depends on how high you are up the chain. So when I was at older Tamians, you're always looking for double hits.
Yeah.
So once you get into a certain level of coaching, you're after double hits. And the first person would always go low. And then the second person would come in sort of, as you said, around the ball height. So I think that's a great, I think that's where it's going to be hard for refs. I think that's where teams may get penalised. I don't think it'll be the initial tackles. I think it might be, the second tackle, i.e. for the double hits. So I think, again, you're going to have to coach it slightly differently. So the first person's going, and that second person has got to go even lower. Again, so if the first person is going real low, which is great, the second person's got to come in around the tummy to finish the tackle off, really. And you've got to, I would be coaching that. I don't think you're going to stop people coaching the double hits because good teams will just offload and get in behind you. So I think you're still going to have the double hits. And I think that's where the referees are going to probably have it tricky. And that's
I was going to say, Speaking of which, I know you're an elite coach and not a referee, but have you spoken to many referees about this? I know Johnny Sexton got himself in trouble. I'm not sure if that was relating to a high tackle, but I do have a lot of sympathy for referees trying to implement these new rules. Have you managed to speak to many to sort of gauge how they're feeling about it all?
Try not to talk to them. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. No, I have a massive respect and sympathy for referees. Like, I'm always, when players moan about the referee, I'll be like, well, he's probably made a lot less mistakes than we have. So actually, like, I'm always trying to coach my teams to get the referees on side. And so I think they have a hard enough job. It's such a hard game. It's great, like, you try and explain this game to someone that's watching it, like, that's never seen it before. They're like, how the earth do you referee that game? There are so many things going on. And the RFU bringing in this law, I'm sure the rest are like, thanks. I think they're probably the ones that sort of put their hands in their head and thought, why another rule that's going to make it harder for us? So yeah, so I think it's going to be tough for them. But I'm hoping that they're going to be sensible with it as well. And it's the level that they're at and understanding of the players' capabilities and what the players are trying to achieve. So let's go to, it's not coming in at championship level or premiership level, which is bizarre because it's where it's the biggest problem, and it's where they're full time and actually can have time to train and implement these new things, but they're not doing it. So if you say, for instance, like National 1, which is a really good level, competitive, semi-pro, good coaches, top players, they're going to be doing the double hits without doubt. So how the refs cope with that will be interesting. But I would have thought, and we had it at Old Attainments, look, you get refs wanting to come and train with you. So they'll come and do training sessions if they want to understand what you're doing as a team, as a coach, what you're trying to achieve. So they're like, oh, actually, that's what you're doing at the breakdown, or that's what you're doing here. And I would have thought there'd probably be quite a lot of that, of how are you actually coaching the tackle now? What are you trying to achieve in the tackle? I think if the refs can understand that, I would have hope it doesn't become a major issue. I don't think it will. I hope it doesn't. I don't think it will.
Yeah. The impression I'm getting there is you're really hitting down on the importance of communication between coaches and referees, and perhaps that's maybe what we're lacking from the governing bodies and those that are making the laws going forwards. I'm convinced that something tackling related is going to majorly affect an important game at the World Cup coming up, which will be quite interesting. Have to see how that plays out. But we are sort of coming to the end of this webinar. So sort of a bit of a 5-minute warning for anyone else that's got any further questions that you might have come into this webinar with, or have come up with as a result of what Sam has said. Slightly going away from tackling for now, whilst we give these people an opportunity to enter questions. The World Cup is in October/November. Does seem a bit far away, but it will come around quick. Are you, first of all, looking forward to it, and where do you see it going? How do you sort of see it playing out?
I think it could be the closest one.
Interesting. Why?
Well, I think Ireland and France are obviously ranked 1 and 2 in the world, and rightly so. It's in France, it's in the Northern Hemisphere, which obviously helps Ireland as well. But then you've got New Zealand and South Africa that you just can't write off. So any of those 4, I think, can win it. And then you've got Australia, England, Wales, Scotland, Argentina that are all capable of probably a one-off upset. But whether any of those teams can put a run of 7 games together, I'm not sure. But I think they're all capable of knocking someone out of a quarterfinal or semi-final. So I think it's great. I would love to see France or Ireland win it. It'd be great to have another name on the cup. Another Northern Hemisphere team winning it would be fantastic. So, and they're all really well coached. Like the game, I think, the Premiership game and the European Cup game the game's really good top end. Like the players are like, it's so exciting to watch. I just hope that it pans out that way in the World Cup as well, and it's not win all at all cost, and we see these boring box kick games, which I don't think we will, because I just think that the way Ireland play, the way France play, New Zealand are always awesome. I'm excited by England. Hopefully we can do better than we have been.
Anyone in particular from an England perspective that we should look out for that perhaps doesn't usually take the headlines?
Well, Marcus Smith's an obvious one if he plays.
Yeah.
I think the scrum half's massively important. Will he play Mitchell, who's just on fire for Northampton? So I think the halfback pairing is a massive indication of the way that England want to play. And so yeah, I would love to see those two play. I think that'd be really exciting. Whether that
We've actually had a really good tackle related question, which is going to be our last tackle related question. And it is from Stuart, who specifically relating to the pick and go from 5 meters out and the ball carriers horizontal. I'm surprised I didn't think of this myself, actually, because it's something I always pick up on when watching.
It's what all of the forwards have talked about, and all forward coaches are like, how do you defend the pick and go? And
almost impossible, right? From a tackle technique perspective, or not?
Well, to be fair, the way that sort of I've coached it or been involved with coaches at the top end is that actually you've got to dive at their feet anyway to stop them on the pick and go. So you've got and if you see how low the defender, like you watch the Prem or internationals, the defenders are almost in a horizontal position on the try line. And as soon as that player picks, they're just diving at his feet. They are literally diving at his feet to stop him, because once he gets momentum, especially if you've got someone behind him, you're not stopping it anyway. So it is tough. I'd love to know how relevant it is, probably for sort of 80% of us as coaches to worry about it that much.
Yeah.
With Champar, we train Tuesday and Thursday nights, and we will put a little bit of emphasis on it, but we've got a lot of other stuff to worry about as well. But I think the first person has got to go horizontal, dive at the feet, and just make an attempt to wrap, because then you get done for no wrap tackle. And again, you're hoping. I think it might just lead to more tries, because there's nothing you can do. There might be some position. It's like there's nothing I can do here. It's like on the clear out. If someone's in a good position, I think you're going to see less people flying in and clearing out and hitting the head, because it's like you're going to get a red card. So sometimes you just have to hold your hands up and say, there's nothing I could do there that was legal. Or take a yellow for the team, maybe. Yeah. It's a great question. It's one that I've had, that has come up in a lot of conversations of how do you defend a pick and go. It's hard enough to defend anyway.
Especially the weight behind the ball. That's a really good question. Thank you for that. And that is going to bring us to the end of this webinar. We've had a few comments in the chat box about this, but we will be sending out and recording this webinar to all our rugby subscribers. We'll also be sharing some lesson plans that Sam has kindly put together that coaches can use amongst their groups, and you've also designed approximately about 30 video drills that we'll be putting on our Sportplan site for everyone to use as a reference and get ideas from across all the board, whether that's beginners or at a more advanced level. So it's something we're very much pushing at Sportplan. So with no further ado, thank you very much for joining us, and we're going to wrap it up there. If anyone has any questions as a result of this, please don't hesitate to get in touch at info@sportplan.com or on our community page on our Sportplan site. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sam.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.